is Geoff Mulgan, the CEO of Nesta Foundation, and we're going to ask a couple questions. The first is that during your speech today you spoke about the story of the shaman and the two bears and the little boy, and the consequences the crisis might have had on the current institutional framework. So our question was if you could kind of explain that further and shed some light on if you think that a rethinking of institutional design is important for creating a more inclusive future, and if so, what the role of social enterprise would be in this new agenda.
We're 5 years now after the financial crisis really hit hard, and yet for most of those 5 years I think governments around the world have mainly been trying to rebuild what they had before. And yet the lesson of past deep economic crises is you only really get a new surge of growth when you change the rules of the game, you change how your economy is organised. And often at each stage of capitalism's evolution, people have had to work out ways of making it more inclusive, bringing in more people as with chances to work, to mobilise their talents, or as consumers. That's what happened after for example, the great crash of 1929 ended up with new models of welfare state, worker involvement in industry, mass consumption. A whole set of institutional changes were needed in order then to get 30, 40 years of growth. I think we're in a similar position now, but governments are still, as I say, looking backwards rather than looking forwards to a new kind of economy in which I think social enterprises and businesses will be playing a big role, because it will be an economy which is much more founded on social value, on relationships, not just on the sale of things, on sustainable models of handling energy, ecology, and so on. I use this metaphor, which I found in a story from Canada, of the shaman. And it's a story of a little boy being introduced to an old shaman, and the shaman says to him, "I have inside me these two bears. One is a violent, brutal, warlike bear, and the other is a kind, caring, compassionate bear." And the little boy is kind of worried when he hears that and says, "Oh my God, which one's going to win?" Assuming the violent one will eat the compassionate one. And the shaman says, "Well, actually, whichever one I feed wins." And I think as a society, well, all our societies, we have to choose which ones we're going to feed. Are we going to feed to the destructive, predatory sides of our economy, our capitalism, or are we going to feed those sides of it which are creative, which generate genuine value, genuine opportunities, are inclusive? And at the moment, it's in the balance.
Great. So the second question is more on Italy. So over the past year, we've seen some changes in the entrepreneurial scene, and including the rise of startup cooperatives. And seeing as how the social cooperative is the most mature model of social enterprises in Italy, the question is, do you think it also being different from the standard enterprise startup, do you think there are any particular incentives or tools that are necessary to promote its flourishing?
I'm not an expert on what's happening around Italy. I am involved in a network across Europe of new tools of startup support generally, which apply to commercial businesses, social enterprises and cooperatives. And I think there is globally a bit of a shift going on from perhaps previous models of incubator towards much more structured accelerators. And that may well be, I think is likely to be as relevant for co-ops as any other organisational form, where you try and design in often much more hands-on help to get the business models, the organisational structures right, rather than just providing a space where people do it for themselves, and much more orchestrated linking to purchasers and bringing in from a very early stage the first likely clients for whatever the cooperative is providing, whether they are sort of individual citizens or it may be providing a service to another co-op or another business. And again, this is partly responding to the mistakes perhaps for a previous generation of incubators who didn't pay enough attention to the role of early contracts in helping firms develop and get the right approaches to quality, management, etc. But it may well be Italy will do something quite different from other countries and we can then just copy what works here.
We'll find out. The last question is your general opinion about the EU policy and social entrepreneurship, and if you think that what's been done so far, for example, the Social Business Initiative and the European Social Entrepreneurship Funds are enough, or if you think there is something more that should be done.
The European institutions have gone a lot further than I would have expected on social enterprise, social entrepreneurship and also social innovation, building at least the words into funding streams, discussion about new laws, opening up markets and so on. And it's good to see things like the European Investment Bank, talking about new types of investment fund for this sector. And yet, in reality, nearly all the heavy lifting on social entrepreneurship is going to be way, way, way down from the lofty heights of Brussels and Luxembourg. Because of the nature of social enterprise and social entrepreneurship, they tend to be quite small, often quite localized, and they depend as much on a local municipality or regional government or national government. And I think the key role probably the European level institutions can play is in nudging, cajoling, prodding those, say, lower tier bodies to actually be open to this phenomenon. And it's still the case, I think, right across Europe, most public bodies are not. They do not see this as a source of value. They see it as probably an annoyance, a distraction, and certainly haven't put in place funds, regulation, laws and so on to actually nurture social entrepreneurship and get the most out of it. So let's be realistic about what can be done at the level of Brussels. It's more, I think, can act as a champion, but the doing has to be more local.